I just discovered something insane about Ben 10s that will blow your mind. So you know how we all love Ben 10, right? Well, there was this episode that was so dark and scary that they almost didn't air it on Cartoon Network. I'm talking about Be Afraid of the Dark. And trust me, after you hear what happens in this episode, you'll understand why kids were probably having nightmares. So this whole crazy story starts when Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max are just driving around in the Rust Bucket. You know, their awesome RV. They see this news report about a space shuttle launch getting delayed because of some weird purple lightning. Now, if you've been watching Ben 10, you know that purple lightning is never a good sign. Ben being Ben, he thinks he can handle everything by himself. There's this whole scene where escaped prisoners take over their bus, and Ben tries to be the hero. He wants to turn into Four Arms, because Four Arms is totally awesome. But the Omnitrix has other plans and turns him into Stinkfly instead. Classic Omnitrix, am I right? But here's where things get scary. Ben ends up making everything worse. He accidentally causes Max to shoot lasers that destroy a bridge. Like, the whole bridge just collapses. Can you imagine if that happened in real life? That would be terrifying. And Ben gets handcuffed to the prison bus while it's flying off the broken bridge. Thank goodness Max and Gwen are there to save him, because Ben would have been in serious trouble. So the Tennysons remember seeing that purple lightning before, when they fought the mummy and the werewolf from previous episodes. And they're like, oh no, something bad is definitely happening. They drive to Kennedy Space Center, which is where NASA launches rockets and stuff. Here's a cool fact they reveal in this episode. Grandpa Max was supposed to be the first man on the moon. Can you believe that? Instead of Neil Armstrong, it could have been Max Tennyson walking on the moon. But Max chose to become a plumber, the secret alien fighting organization, instead to protect Earth from aliens. That's pretty heroic if you ask me. At the Space Center, they meet this scientist guy called Dr. Victor. And let me tell you, this guy looks super suspicious from the start. He's big, mean-looking, and has this aggressive personality. Like, he couldn't scream, "I'm the bad guy," any louder if he tried. But none of the other scientists realized they never actually hired this guy. Talk about security problems. Dr. Victor sees Ben's Omnitrix and gets all excited about it, which is definitely not normal scientist behavior. Then things get really weird when the werewolf shows up and attacks Ben in this spinning machine called a centrifuge. This is where the episode gets really cool. Ben tries to turn into Heat Blast to fight the werewolf, but instead he becomes Ben Mummy. Yeah, he turns into the same species as that Egyptian mummy they fought before. But here's the thing, Ben has no idea how to use his mummy powers. He's just wrapped in bandages trying to figure out how to move them around. It's actually pretty funny watching him struggle, but also kind of scary because the werewolf is trying to destroy him. The coolest part is when Ben accidentally turns on the centrifuge machine, and they're fighting while spinning around super fast. But then Grandpa Max shows up and attacks Ben because he thinks Ben is the evil mummy. That must have been so confusing for Max. So everyone thinks Dr. Victor is the main bad guy. But oh boy, were they wrong. It turns out Victor is working for someone much worse. And when I tell you who it is, you're gonna freak out. Ben follows the bad guys to this old junkyard, and there's this epic fight scene where Ben turns into Cannonbolt, the armadillo alien, and XLR-8, the super fast one. But then Dr. Victor hits Ben with purple lightning and transforms into this huge, scary Frankenstein monster. He's called a Transillian, and he looks absolutely terrifying with these metal parts growing out of his back. But then, and this is the part that probably scared so many kids, they reveal that Victor isn't even the real villain. He's working for his master. And when Victor opens this portal with purple lightning, guess who comes back from the dead? Ghost Freak. Or as we learn, his real name is Zizscare. Remember when Ben defeated Ghost Freak way back in Ghost Freaked Out? Well, turns out you can't really kill an ectoneurite, that's Ghost Freak species, because their consciousness can survive in even the tiniest piece of their DNA. So Ghost Freak has been hiding and planning his revenge this whole time. That's genuinely creepy when you think about it. Okay, so here's where this episode gets really dark. Ghost Freak's plan isn't just to take over Ben's body or steal the Omnitrix. No, this guy wants to basically end the world as we know it. His plan is absolutely terrifying. He wants to use a space station to shoot a corrodium beam, that's this dangerous alien substance, all around Earth. This beam would create a shell around the planet that blocks out the sun completely. Can you imagine living in a world with no sunlight? It would be like permanent nighttime. But wait, it gets worse. The corrodium doesn't just block the sun. It also mutates every human and animal on Earth into horrible monsters. We actually see this happen in the episode. And it's genuinely scary. Every person on the planet turns into these gross, mutated creatures. That's some serious nightmare fuel right there. The reason Ghost Freak wants to block out the sun is because sunlight is his weakness. With no sun, he'd be at full power 24/7 and could rule over Earth forever. And since everyone would be mutated monsters, they'd probably be easier for him to control. The final battle happens in space, which is already pretty intense for a kids' show. Max, Ben, and Gwen end up on this space station trying to stop Ghost Freak's plan. There's this crazy scene where Gwen accidentally gets herself and Max sucked out into space through an airlock. They're literally floating in space wearing hazmat suits that aren't designed for the vacuum of space. That's terrifying. Ben gets the Transyllian DNA scanned into his Omnitrix because Victor touched it earlier, so he can turn into this new alien called Frankenstrike. It's basically Ben's version of Victor, with the same electric powers and everything. The space battle between Frankenstrike and Ghost Freak is absolutely epic. Ghost Freak becomes even more powerful in space. He gets bigger, spikier, and develops this chest blaster thing. They're shooting energy beams at each other while floating in space. And it looks amazing, but also really dangerous. Here's the part that probably made Cartoon Network executives nervous. Ghost Freak actually succeeds with his plan. The corrodium beam fires and hits Earth, and we see every single human on the planet transform into a mutant monster. This isn't just implied or shown briefly. We actually see it happening all over the world. Can you imagine being a kid watching this and seeing everyone on Earth become monsters? That's way darker than most cartoon shows would dare to go. For a few minutes, it really looks like Ghost Freak has won, and the world is doomed. Thankfully, Max manages to crash a space shuttle into the satellite receiver, which destroys the whole network and reverses all the mutations. But for those few minutes, Earth was basically a planet of monsters ruled by an evil ghost alien. That's some serious dystopian nightmare stuff. Even after the plan is stopped, Ghost Freak isn't done. He tries one last time to possess Ben and take control of the Omnitrix. He grabs Ben and says that once he controls the Omnitrix, he'll be unstoppable. But here's the clever part. Ben tricks Ghost Freak by smiling, which confuses the evil alien. Ghost Freak thinks Ben is crazy for smiling in the face of death, but Ben is actually smiling because he knows what's coming next. Gwen opens the airlock and points it toward the sun, and Ghost Freak gets completely disintegrated by the solar radiation. You'd think that would be the end, right? Wrong! The episode ends on this really creepy note. After they land back on Earth, using Cannonbolt as a living escape pod, which is pretty cool, Ben looks at his Omnitrix and sees Ghost Freak's silhouette is back inside it. This means that when the Omnitrix scanned Victor's DNA earlier, it also rescanned Ghost Freak's DNA since they were touching. And since Ghost Freak's consciousness can survive in even a tiny bit of his DNA, this means he's not really gone. He's trapped inside the Omnitrix again, just waiting for another chance to escape. Looking back at this episode, it's easy to see why some people might have thought it was too dark for kids. You've got the entire human race being mutated into monsters, characters getting thrown into the vacuum of space, a villain who literally came back from the dead, the strong implication that evil can never truly be destroyed. some pretty intense body horror with the mutations, the psychological horror of Ghost Freak's plan. But honestly, I think this episode is brilliant. It shows that Ben 10 wasn't afraid to tell serious stories with real stakes. The writers didn't talk down to kids or assume they couldn't handle complex, darker themes. This episode proves that animation can tell just as compelling and intense stories as any live-action show. Plus, it has this amazing message about teamwork. Throughout both parts of the episode, Ben keeps trying to do everything by himself and keeps messing up. It's only when he works together with Max and Gwen that they're able to save the world. That's a pretty important lesson wrapped up in all the alien action. So there you have it, the story of Ben 10's darkest episode that almost didn't make it to air. What do you think? Was this episode too scary for kids, or was it just the right amount of dark to make it exciting? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more crazy cartoon theories and deep dives. And remember, the next time you see purple lightning in a cartoon, you better start worrying, because it's probably not going to end well.